Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am BLAK, and as you all know, typically I create realistic Dynasty series on this channel, and I like to create an atmosphere around them. And with the release of NBA 2K24, I will have a series coming out eventually. I'm not exactly sure when, but sometime soon, I imagine, is when I will make the first episode for that. But I wanted to make a video today explaining to you guys the top teams or the most fun teams that I think are in NBA 2K24 for you to rebuild. Now, there are a lot of options. There's 30 NBA teams, obviously, and you can also do relocations or expansion teams. So I think it's going to be interesting to see a lot of teams that you could take over and control. But I want to start with a few honorable mentions. First off, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. They have a couple of major guys on one-year deals. You've got Paul George. He is currently on a one-year expiring contract. Technically, he's got 2 years, but it does say it expires. Then you've got Kawhi Leonard. He should be expiring this year. You've got Westbrook signed on a 2-year deal. You've got a lot of pieces that you can really decide what direction this team goes. Ever since they brought in Kawhi Leonard, they have not been as good as you would have liked, and Paul George, they have not been as good as you would have liked. So do you stick with this core? Do you give it another chance with this core to go back and win a championship? That is up to you. So I don't think they're going to be like the most fun team to rebuild, but I do think they have a lot of potential to make a fun takeover there, because you can stick to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and probably make a championship run, but after that, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to kind of take that team to another level. Now, there are a few other teams that I think could be honorable mentions. The Kings aren't really a rebuild, but taking them after a record year last year, their first playoff appearance in forever, and taking them to the title town would be very, very fun. The same thing with the Knicks. The Knicks have finally gotten decent the last few years, but they haven't been able to get over the hump. So I think taking this core here with the young guys they have and the draft picks they've made, and maybe making a splash in free agency, making a big trade, something like that. I think taking the Knicks over and doing something like that would be a very, very fun Dynasty or MyNBA series. And another honorable mention is the Orlando Magic, and I've only got one more after them. The Magic are still in a rebuild mode, but they have a lot of talent, so I do think they would be fun to play with, but not necessarily like a prototypical rebuild, because if we're being honest, they already have all of their pieces. You've got a point guard at Markelle Fultz, you've got Paolo, you've got Franz Wagner, you've got Wendell Carter. Everybody on this roster is young except for Joe Ingles, Gary Harris. Pretty much everybody else on there is young. You've got young point guards like Anthony Black. You've got Jet Howard. Goga Badotsi still has some potential. So they have a lot of young players on this roster, and a lot of them are already solidified, which makes me kind of stay away from them. Same thing goes with the Pistons. They have been for a while now one of the top teams to rebuild. But I think with Cade, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, all of these young pieces, I think they're going to be way too easy of a rebuild, because by about, year 3, Cade's going to be a 90-plus overall in most dynasties. So I think that could be something that would... How did it go all the way from the Pistons to the Grizzlies? I couldn't tell you. But I think that's something that could be holding them back. And I guess I should word it better now here that I'm about to get into my 5 teams, in my opinion, that would be the most fun. It's not necessarily all 5 of these teams are going to be the best to rebuild. Some of them already have pieces that could be fun to take over, and a lot of young superstars maybe, but the 5 teams that I think will be the most fun to take over and lead to a championship, which is what I mean by rebuild. So without further ado, those are our honorable mentions. We're going to get into the number 5 spot here on this list. And that is going to be none other than we'll get over to them right here. The Washington Wizards are the number 5 team on this rebuild. I think they offer a unique advantage that no other team really offers. Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma are your 2 best players. They are basically a blank canvas here. You've got Kyle Kuzma locked up for 4 years. You've got Jordan Poole locked up for 4 years at about 34, or capping out at $34 million. You've got Tyus Jones. You've got a lot of young pieces, but nobody that is very solidified. Bilal Koulibaly, he comes out of France with Victor Wembanyama. He is a rookie, but he hasn't really shown a lot of flashes that we expect him to be a great guy. But at number 7 overall, you can definitely develop him. Then you've also got Johnny Davis, who last year, if we're just being honest, for the 10th overall pick, not very good. Averaged about 6 points per game, 2 rebounds and assists in his limited time. So the Wizards basically give you, in my opinion, the best canvas to just make a completely revamped team. Basically, in 4 years or shorter, if you decide to trade them, none of these guys have to be on the roster. All of these guys can be gone. All of these guys can be replaced. You can keep some young guys. You can trade them all. It doesn't really matter. I think they are going to give the best outlook for a complete and utter rebuild. As you can see, their starting lineup right now is DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet, Kyle Kuzma, Denny Avdia, and Daniel Gafford. I'm sure Jordan Poole will get the starting spot, but for whatever reason, the game right now has him listed as the 6th man. So that is not a good lineup. They're listed as rebuilding in the team status, and I think the Wizards are going to be the best chance for you to take over a team and just make them a completely new roster, especially if you want to do like a relocation, just because of how bad they have been. I think Washington, basically a new rebuild team, and just completely start over with the Wizards. And at number 4, the next team on this list is a team that a lot of people just, if you ask them 3-4 seasons ago, were a championship contender. You've got the Brooklyn Nets. They have a young Mikal Bridges, which they traded for Kevin Durant, or traded Kevin Durant for. They brought in Cam Johnson, who is 27, so he's not necessarily young, but you've got Cam Thomas, who last year, he played amazing late down the stretch there, but he's still young and still has a lot to prove there. Ben Simmons, you've got to figure out the answer there, but this team is not that great overall. They've got some young guys, Noah Clowney, Day'Ron Sharpe at 21. Trendon Watford is a new guy here coming from Portland as a center. So this team's got a mixture of veterans. You've got a young core, Mikal Bridges, Nicholas Claxton, Cam Thomas, but then you've also got guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Ben Simmons, Royce O'Neal. A lot of young, but also a lot of veteran pieces, and I think they just don't have the talent to be a great team right now. And I think if we're best case scenario, they are a fringe play-in team. They struggled down the stretch at the end of the year after the trades, obviously, giving up a lot of talent last year in KD and Kyrie and James Harden a few seasons ago. This team, you basically want to build around Mikal Bridges. You've got him locked up for 3 years. He looks like a all-star or superstar in the making, in my opinion, on offense. And on defense, he has been magnificent. Nicholas Claxton can be the starting center of the future. And after that, you've really just got to figure out where the team lies behind those top 2 guys. And I think that's what will give them, or give the Nets, the most fun as a rebuild or as a dynasty mode. As you can see, they are rebuilding, but with a starting lineup, Spencer Dinwiddie, Bridges, Johnson, Finney-Smith, and Claxton, and Cam Thomas off the bench, you can still have fun with this team in year 1. I just don't think you'll have success in year 1, which is basically the biggest criteria. Is you want to be able to have fun, you want to be able to have success down the road, and that's why I put the Nets at number 4. I think they are going to be a very, very fun team to take over right now, and a fun team to rebuild and take over for the future, in my opinion at least. And like I want to preface, these are all my opinions, so if you disagree or you have a team that you guys are specifically going to take over and rebuild, I'd love to hear your opinions on that, and I'd love to see how you guys, or who you guys are taking over in NBA 2K24 for your MyNBA series that you guys are doing. So I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments down below. And the third team on this list is going to be the Houston Rockets. They've been a rebuilding team for a while now, and I think it's only going to continue for Rockets fans. I'm sorry for y'all. You signed Fred VanVleet in the offseason to a massive contract there, over $40 million a year. And I think that's a questionable move. You have a team option, obviously, but Fred VanVleet is not going to make this team a playoff contender alone. Jalen Green really needs to take another step as a player. I know he's had a good career so far, but at 22 points per game, not the greatest shooting split. Still just 34% from 3 and 41% from the field. I need Jalen Green to show me more. Alperen Sengun, in my opinion right now, sits as the most interesting player on this roster. He moves a lot like Jokic with his playmaking ability. His defense is questionable, but still somewhat reliable, and his offense can be a very good spot for that center spot. But then you signed Dylan Brooks as well to a big contract, 27 years old. So this team is just a mixture. You've got Amon Thompson. You've got young pieces. You've got really old pieces like Jeff Green, Terrence Ross, Fred VanVleet. You've got all of that. And I still think this roster is very far away from competing. So you've got to answer the questions. Do you think Jalen Green is going to be the future guy there for the Rockets? Or do you focus on a guy like Jabari Smith Jr., a guy like Kevin Porter Jr., who's been around for a few years but has been in trade rumors? Tari Eason's young. Amen Thompson, he's really going to be fighting for that shooting guard position with Jalen Green, in my opinion, as dynasties or as MyNBAs go along and the overalls get a little bit closer. So you've got some questions to answer in some big decisions to make if you take over the Rockets. And right now, this roster is not ready to make a playoff run. And you've got to really decide if you're willing to sit back and watch Fred VanVleet get older, watch Dylan Brooks get older and regress as your younger guys get better, and by the time they're really good enough to make a deep run, you've got to wonder if the veterans on this team are even going to be good enough to support that deep run. So the Rockets are in a weird spot where they've been rebuilding for a while now, but they signed some veterans, and in my opinion, they're still in an even weirder position because you don't know if it's better to just completely rebuild again, or if it's better to hope that these young guys can take over before the veterans get very bad or very old. And we'll have to see how they end up in real life, but that's why I have them at number 3. They're not the most interesting team, but it is a lot of questions. It's a lot of fun things to do, and with this Rockets team, and that's why they're sitting at number 3 on my list. And at number 2, I kind of went back and forth with the number 2 and the number 1 team. I think you could put them in either spot. And like I said, it's just my opinion, so I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts if you have different opinions on this. But at number 2 of the top 5 teams to take over in NBA 2K24 and rebuild, we have the Portland Trailblazers. You've got so much young talent down there, and you've got the biggest decision in the entire NBA to make. Damian Lillard, do you trade him or do you keep him? Obviously, he's made it very well known he wants out, but he only wants to go to Miami. The issue with that is Miami doesn't have the greatest package. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo obviously are safe, but you've got Tyler Hero. Trailblazers have made it known, really, at their guard positions, they're set with Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons. They don't want Tyler Hero. Outside of them, they don't have very many young pieces. Nikola Jovic, Jamie Jaquez Jr., Orlando Robinson. Nobody that is really, in my opinion, solidified themselves as an NBA player, because some of them are rookies, some of them are like second or third year guys, but none of them have shown all that much promise, really, if we're looking at their careers as a whole. So you've got to make the decision. Do you just let Damian Lillard sit and stew and hit the cap hold and, lose money there? Or do you pull the trigger? Do you make a 3-team trade? Do you make a 4-team trade? You've got to think about stuff like that if you take over the Trailblazers. And the reason I put them at number 2 over a few of the teams in the past is because their roster outside of that is very fun. You've got question marks. You've got Jeremy Grant. What do you do with him at a 5-year deal? You just re-signed him to that. So he's going to be getting paid. And at 30 years old, basically, not a lot of teams are going to want to be trading for a 30-year-old small forward who's not that great, making $36 million at age 33. So you've got a question mark there. You've got a question mark with Yusuf Nurkic, a 30-year-old center making $20 million in a few years. You've got question marks there, but then you've also got answers. Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Matisse Thybulle is going to grow into a good 3-and-D guy if he can just develop his shot or his offensive game a little bit more. Nasir Little. You've got young pieces, you've got fun pieces, and a couple of fun two-way guys down there at the bottom. In my opinion, that makes this Trailblazers team one of the better teams to take over, or I shouldn't say better, the more fun teams to take over, especially if you're able to answer that question of who do you trade for Damian Lillard, or how do you trade Damian Lillard, and that is the ultimate question that makes this rebuild or this roster so much fun to take over. And finally, I think most of you guys saw this coming, the number 1 team to take over and rebuild in MyNBA, in my opinion, is going to be the San Antonio Spurs. They were one of the worst teams in the NBA the last few years, and they drafted a very, very hyped up first overall pick, Victor Wembanyama, Outside of him, they have young pieces all over this roster, a very young team. They've got a couple of veterans, Reggie Bullock, Campaign, Devontae Graham, Chetty Osman, Doug McDermott's still there. But this team can go in so many different directions. As you guys know, I took over them for my NBA series. I didn't end up completing it, unfortunately. It just didn't do as well as I thought it would. But it was so much fun taking them over and playing as Victor Wembanyama. You've got the young pieces over or around Vic that I think are going to make this even more fun. And then you've got question marks. You've got a question mark behind Vic. Who do you play at backup? Zach Collins, is he a long-term answer? Is Jeremy Sochan a long-term power forward? Can Keldon Johnson take the next step in his career at 24 years old? A lot of questions around this team. But really the biggest answer is Victor Wembanyama. He is going to be the future. He is going to be so fun to play with, especially a 7-foot whatever center. I don't need no tutorials here, 2K. But Victor Wembanyama at 7'4", 19 years old from France. You've got to figure out how you can build around him, how you can keep him in San Antonio, and how you can win with him, and that's what makes, in my opinion, the Spurs one of the best and most fun teams to take over. I won't be doing them again, obviously, as I've already done them on this channel twice now. I did them back in 2K21, I believe, and I did a shorter series that I didn't finish, obviously, I mentioned earlier, last year in 2K23. So I think the Spurs are a great team to take over. I won't be doing it, but I hope a lot of you guys are going to take them over in MyNBA and have a lot of fun with them. But I would love to hear your guys' input. Who do you think is going to be the most fun team to take over in MyNBA and NBA2K24? And what are you guys going to be playing the most on this game? I think the eras is a very fun idea, and I might be doing stuff with that on my channel. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. As always, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. And I'll catch each and every one of y'all next time. Peace.